That's some busted up track. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, today's video over there at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the Big Dipper derailed. And I thought this was a good chance to talk about it and just rides derailing in general. So let's get right into it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Alright, if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Check out some more videos. I got plenty of them. I think I've got like 3, 4, 5. I've got a lot. So go check them out. If you're coming back, welcome back. I'm glad you clicked on the video. Watch another one. A lot of us are very interested in this topic. It's always a big thing that comes up, especially if you're newer towards the industry. If you're not quite sure how rides work, it's always a fear that people have to, like, how does a ride derail? And actually, it's not common at all. In fact, it's very, very uncommon that a ride derails. But there's mainly two types of derailment. There's a track derailment and a coaster derailment, and I'll get into both of those. But what I wanted to start the video off on is probably the reason why most of you clicked on the video is over there at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. There is the Big Dipper roller coaster, and it derailed recently. July 23rd, 2026, the Big Dipper over there stopped at a low point in the track. Well, that's the official statement, stopped at a low point, and they didn't quite say it derailed, but judging by the video that instantly came out, because the people actually on the train started making videos about it, it's very clear that it derailed and it tore up a bunch of stuff. So let's take a look at some of those videos real quick. By the way, officially from the park, a spokesperson from Pleasure Beach Resort said the Big Dipper came to a stop Thursday, July 23rd around 2 p.m. at a very low point in the ride. Following this, a manual deboarding took place with guests guided safely by train operators. All guests were checked at first aid and train staff with no injuries reported. Okay, so this first video is coming to us from TikTok by the theme park guy. So it's not my video, of course, it's from TikTok. So basically when I show videos on this channel, I'm not using it like most channels would. I'm really curious to see on these videos what is happening in the video, what's going on. So it's more of an analysis than the content for it. So let's look at this. Starting off the video, of course, this is a downloaded, so you're going to see the player head come up all the time down here. But what I'm looking at on this video is, it's like, okay, the track in this area is naturally banked to the left. So the left side of the track is lower than the right side of the track. So the front 3 coaches, or front 2 coaches, are on the track still, but this back one that the person is filming from is not. This is the coach that has derailed. So let's watch this video real quick. Yep, that's some busted up track right there. Okay, here's another shot of that area. This is coming from a different, I'm honestly not sure where this picture is coming from, but they've taken out people's faces out of the picture, which is cool, no big deal. All right, so in this area, what we're seeing is that last coach. This is the back coach that person was filming from. In fact, that person looked like they're filming from right in this position right here. So you're seeing that the first 2 coaches are still seated correctly into the track, and the 3rd coach back here is out. You can see both of the road wheels are off the track right there. They're hanging down. And it's basically the brake fin of the coach, the piece that sticks down in the center that catches the brakes at the end of the ride. The brake fin is the part that actually did all the damage to the track on the other side. So here's a look at the track on the other side. This is a still photo. I found someone who did video of this. I think that's where all these pictures came from. But you could see that if you look up here, it looks like the track seems to be fairly parallel down here until right about this area. You can see something's kind of smoking right here. Not uncommon in this type of situation to see smoke or something along those lines. you've had a lot of energy dissipated in a very, very short period of time in that very direct little spot. So don't be surprised if there was everything underneath the train is metal. Everything on the track where the road and guide and upstop wheels touch, all of that is metal as well. Well, if there's upstop steel in this area, a lot of wood coasters don't use upstop steel everywhere. Probably this area is one of them. They probably just have the road plates, which are these top steel plates right here. And then on the side, this is guide steel. So you have where the road wheels go, you have steel there, and where the guide wheels go on the inside, you have steel there. So it's probably where something has struck that steel, because this was directly after where it valleyed, and it's really hot. Now, it does look like this left-hand side is pushed out to the left. It doesn't look like it's in line anymore. But the key thing to take away here is that the brake fin has taken all of these pieces of wood apart, going side to side. Those pieces that run across there, where they cross the bents, those are the headers. And then you have all sorts of ledgers and all sorts of other wood components, basically, that tie the two laminate stacks together. And that third coach basically went through all that wood kind of like a hot knife through butter, and it just busted everything up. So the fact that one of the laminate stacks is leaning to the left or has moved over to the left is not surprising, because you've essentially cut the track in half. Like, yeah, it's gonna do that. Not comically out of the way, but don't be surprised if it shifts. Absolutely. This is the same picture, kind of, someone just zoomed in a little bit more. Maybe it was the same thing, but you could see some of the smoke kind of coming up from this area. All right, now what we're gonna look at next is a video where it was a day or two after, and this is, I guess, the train that runs right by there. Someone was recording on the train, and they basically got pictures of this. Now, I understood. I waited a week once this happened, because I wanted to see if there was more information that come out, more point of views, more people saying stuff. There was a person that was interviewed that was on the ride, and they said it felt like the track just split open, basically. Well, a statement like that, it's like, okay, you take it for what it's worth. The track literally was split open. The coach cut it in half. All right, so it did split open, but I want to kind of look at the question is like, why did it split open? So let's look at that a little further. Let's look at this video first. Sorry, I've got a still picture of it right here. This is kind of the area zoomed in. You could see most of the cross tie boards have been removed. They went through and did a nice job. You can tell down here where they cut those cross ties out of there just to make it look better. It's a forward-facing thing. They got people driving by this or going by this area. So they're like, okay, take the stuff that looks broken and get rid of it, because it looks bad. Okay, this is a video from the train I was talking about. Let's watch this. Yep, this must have been just the next day after it. Yeah, that's from Thrill Compass. This was Thrill Compass. I believe this was Instagram. And you can see how they've just cutting all the cross ties out of there. Okay, so I'm going to go back over to YouTube now. I'm not sure. I found this video from Bollywood News. I'm not sure if it's their video. It looks like it's their video, but I mean, people repost things. But I found this from the company, the creators called Bollywood News. And this is basically, looks like they're on the train from the accident. Let's check this out.
Yeah. It's not just great.
It's good.
Yep, so they are...
It's not just great.
It's good.
You definitely see it smoking right there. Actually caught the smoke coming off of it. Yeah, so this was directly after the accident for sure. Okay, let's look at the Blackpool Pleasure Beach Big Dipper. This is the official on ride. We'll forward on here. Again, I'm not trying to get people's content and stuff. All right, so from the top of the ride, I want to give you guys for those who don't know, I want to show you where this happened. Okay, so down the first drop, carrying good amount of speed up the next hill, down the second drop, up the next hill, see the anti-rollbacks right there. Right here is where it happened. Right there. This is where it happened. Okay, now, if I want to pull this back, now what I want to look at on here, all right, so this is the area where it happened right here. What we noticed, or what I noticed, is that, all right, from the other picture, see, this is where the coach is leveled out down here at the bottom, and we go up just a little bit, but you notice the cross ties on the track are still intact. So what I think of when the train derails is that what's actually happened is that the coach has come out of the track. Well, you can't just take the coach out of the track because the upstops hold it. So on wooden roller coasters especially, this is a track failure, basically, where the track has opened up or broken apart in some cases, but in most cases, the gauge of the track, the distance between the left rail and the right rail, has opened up. And when it opens up like that, it can allow a wheel, that upstop, to come out and basically jumps on top of the track. Once that happens, the right side or the left side, depending on whatever the opposite was, can simply just slide out, and then that particular axle is loose. If it's a big spot where the entire thing has shifted over, both axles, the front axle and the rear axle, can come out on this particular style. A lot of coasters are trailer hitched off the one in front of it, so each coach only has one axle. But these older style coaches use 2 axles per coach. So in this case, it looks like both axles has come out, which means we're looking at something probably like the entire laminate stack on one side has failed. Which side? Pure speculation, don't know. Let's see if we can look at the video and get a little more clue to which side might have gone. Okay, so back here in the video, not extreme upstop, it's just right there, and then down here, it doesn't really look like much of anything happens right there. Kind of go through here, doesn't look like hard laterals, a little bit turn, but I can see right here, there was that little. Now, as we go down right here, we're correcting from a turn coming from the left, and then we're about to straighten out, which means that the coaster naturally is going to go from pushed up against the right-hand side rail, because that's where its force is going as it makes that left-hand turn. It's trying to go to the right. It's trying to go straight. So it's going to go from that right-hand rail, and then as it comes down this drop, it's going to get basically shoved over to the left-hand side. Now, really interesting, if you look at this video right here, what's on the left-hand side? It looks like they've got some sort of stiffeners right there, like they're trying to keep the laminate stack from shifting. Have we done this before? Now, this is not a red flag. This is not like, oh my gosh, the park isn't doing things. Like, this is none of that. This coaster's over 100 years old, right? This is a 100-year celebration video, and this was posted 3 years ago, right? So this coaster's 103 years old. Holy crap, that's an old coaster. So what they've recognized that this is a spot that over the years they've just continued to have problems. So they've come up with fixes like, okay, they're going to stiffen that side. They're literally going to put a reinforcement wall on that side so that track can take that beating time and time again. and it lessens the amount of time that they have to repair stuff. One of the things I don't like about this area, not these stiffeners. I actually have no problem with the stiffeners. That's something the park did great. The problem I have with this area in this video is actually this brush right here, this grass. And see, it's coming in on the inside of the track right there too. I really don't like that. That is actually a red flag to me. It's like, what do you mean? They could stiffen the track with these makeshift things, but you don't like the grass growing up there? Here's why. Areas like this particular park, they have a lot of rain, they have a lot of moisture, a lot of humidity, a lot of mold, a lot of everything else. The grass foliage around the track will retain even more moisture around that particular area. So if you understand what I'm saying, take a board, lay it out in the backyard, lay it in the grass and let the grass overgrow where you could barely see the board anymore. And then take another board right next to it and elevate it about 5 feet off the grass. Let it sit there for years. The one that's elevated above the grass will have, it'll have some warping, sun fading, things like that. It'll look like a worn board. But the one that was buried in the grass and had grass covering it the whole time will almost be rotted away completely because of excessive mold and mildew and stuff like that. That's not a good environment for it. So, and I think that the reason is because this is at or below grade. You see, there's not much, it doesn't look like there's much room right underneath the track right there. Probably one of the reasons for the stiffening that they did in that particular rail. It's like, okay, they had to keep it tight there because there wasn't much room to work underneath it. It's dirt underneath there, essentially. So I think that might be what's happening right there. And then basically the coaster, so what I think happened is that the coaster jumped. The coaster went down right here, basically. As it pushed back to the left-hand side, it basically pushed that left rail over. Everything shifted over, which allowed the right-hand side upstop, guide wheel, road wheel to basically come out of the track. As soon as that came out of the track, it went down. The center fin underneath the train hit the wooden cross ties. Okay, remember right here, that's a cross tie, cross tie, cross tie. This big, thick, beefy guy right here, that's part of the bent. That's the header, right? That's the header of the track sitting on top of the bent, which supports the entire assembly. So you have a bent, cross tie, cross tie, cross tie, bent. That's how that assembly works. If you want to learn more, I've got a video on wooden roller coasters. I go over that a little more in detail there. There's a lot of little names to that stuff. Anyways, what happened is that brake fin dug into that board, hit. It's a pretty gnarly hit. There's so much energy wrapped up into it that basically it tried to lift the coach out. It couldn't quite do it. It couldn't quite get it out all the way, but it was enough to get the upstop assembly above the rail on the right-hand side. So actually, like, well, how much is that? It's like typical upstop on a wooden roller coaster is only about that big. And the laminate stack board is only about that big. So you're talking, it only had to travel that much. This is in the UK, so it only had to travel 100 millimeters, 10 centimeters, whatever you want to call it, right? Not much. It only had to travel that much to get up on top of the laminate stack. And then once it was on top of the laminate stack, the whole thing was free to shift back over, and then it just continued to stay down. And what you had is two coaches with all the speed pulling that third coach through with the brake fin, literally like a speedboat dropping an anchor out of the back, and that brake fin was just chewing through every single board on the way up until it made it most of the way up, lost its energy because it's been breaking all these boards all the way up that lift hill, all the way up that hill, not lift hill. And then it lost its energy and the thing rolled backwards, settled back down in the valley. But we know it happened in that low spot because here on this picture, you could see these cross ties right here in this header board right here. The header, cross tie, header, cross, cross, cross. All that stuff is not impacted. It's perfectly fine, which means that up here, it was fine. It wasn't until it got down to that bottom part that it had that problem. Now, that's a lot of speculation on my part, granted. That is a lot of speculation. Let's watch another YouTube video. Okay, for this video, I am going to go to Haven Master 123. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name wrong. I apologize. But I'm going to use their Big Dipper on-ride POV from June 2026. Now you're like, why did you go to this channel? Why did you find this video? What I did is I looked for an on-ride video as close as I could to the accident because I wanted to see real time what it looked like. Did any of these conditions still exist? Like, is this even possible? So let's watch this. Okay, coming up that hill, coming down around the corner, and let's see how this goes. All right. Wow. Let's go back a step. Let's look at that again. All right. So, June 2026, just a month before basically this accident, you can see the foliage has overgrown the track. It's now coming out of everywhere. So there's a lot of moisture and everything else being held down inside of here. This is assuming I think I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just completely full of shit, which you can tell me I'm full of shit, doesn't matter. This is still what I'm going to speculate is happening. So you have a lot of water again in this area that's not being taken away. And we already know due to these reinforcement ribs down here that this is a heavy hitting spot for the park. Now let's watch it a little bit again in its entirety and really get the context of this video. Okay, here it comes. Watch the camera action. Did you see that? Haven Master 123, sorry if I'm screwing up that name, I apologize. They're using, or have the camera, whatever, is using motion stabilization for this video to make it smooth. But if you watch, see, if you watch this blue part down here, they just hit an incredible pothole right there as the coaster pulled back up. I mean, you could see that blue front end sitting there in the video, and then it just disappears and everything jars so hard right there. So clearly that spot has gotten a lot worse. And right before this in June, like this video right here is showing like, oh my gosh, it really just, there is a massive pothole there. And once potholes open up on coaches, on the coasters like that, if you don't get to them quickly and find the root cause of it, like why everything is shifting all of a sudden, it is progressively going to get just worse and worse and worse until eventually you break something or you damage something, comes out of tolerance too much. It might not have been a catastrophic failure on that left-hand rail where the thing suddenly completely shifted over. It might have been a gradual shift over time, and the gauge might have just been opening up wider and wider and wider until eventually, with a little impact, those things were free to come loose. And eventually, just one time, that guide wheel got out, the road wheel dropped off its path, and then the brake fin was able to grab and push the whole train up and over the top, and you have a derailed train. Now, this Blackpool Pleasure Beach here, this is the track failure derailment. It's really only common on wooden roller coasters. So I'm kind of wrap up the Blackpool Pleasure Beach part right now. Basically, this is going to be a pretty lengthy repair for them. I'm going to say they're probably going to have about 30-ish meters of track that they are going to just completely have to replace. Like, 100% brand new. They might even have to go down and replace the vents underneath, because what they might find is during their investigation, which is ongoing, they still have not released an official like this is what happened, but they're going to have to probably go underneath there and get their vent structure and maybe fix rotted components in that vent structure and replace the vents. Now, the good news is that stuff is all small, it's low to the ground, so the work should be easy to carry out and it should be quicker to carry out. So it honestly might not reopen for the rest of this year, depending on their staffing levels and how long it takes for them to fix and everything else. It might not open up at the end for the rest of this year, but I don't believe this is a coaster killer situation. This isn't something like the coaster will never reopen, it will never recover. That's not the case at all. I believe this is just simply, it's like, okay, it did some damage. They're going to go back, they're going to fix it. This might be the kick in the butt they need to fix that low spot with something else. Maybe add some more reinforcements, maybe excavate the ground around it to allow proper drainage in the area, something along those lines. Or they might just say, well, you know, it lasted this long, let's just put it right back the way it was. And then say every 20 years we go in and replace that section of track. And that would be a thumbs up. Okay, cool. You know, if you could say we didn't replace that track for 40 years, granted it's a 103-year-old coaster, we didn't replace that track for 40 years and it made it 40 years, then my next step, looking at it from the risk-based management side, it would be like, all right, well, if you got 40 years out of it, I'm like, cut the service interval in half and say every 20 years, replace 40 meters of track in that area, and you're golden. Like, it's no problem. But if they're like, oh, we have to service it constantly every single year in that spot, then that's going to be like, all right, let's reinforce it. Let's do something else. It might even be necessary to maybe put a steel reinforcement rib underneath there, like an L-beam or something underneath there, trying to hold those stacks in place better than just what the wooden headers can do. Okay, so again, that's track failure. That's how the majority of wooden roller coasters derail, is because of the track failure. It's rare that something physically breaks, like the track breaks. That's a rare thing. The steel laminates on the top, the sides, and the insides and underneath, that keeps that all together really, really well. What's more than likely happens every single time a woody derails is that the laminate stack loosens, the headers loosen, something loosens in the bends, and the laminate stacks are allowed to shift. Now, you can't physically grab these and move them or anything else. What you will see is while you're in the infield watching a wooden roller coaster and the train goes by, you will see excessive movement of the laminate stacks. They will move way over and come back. And that is your sign to be like, hey, something is going on there. The second thing to look at is when you find your steel bolts that run all the way through the laminate stacks down at the bottom, when they all start to loosen and then you tighten them up in that area and then they loosen again. That means that the thing's excessively being pulled over to one side, and basically the hardware through the bottom is being pulled up like that. It's overextending the hardware, or you're even breaking hardware. Those are tattletale signs that that's happening. That's wooden roller coasters. That's derailment. That's how those things go. That's what you get when you work with wood. Moving on to steel roller coasters. How do those derail? Well, steel roller coasters are way different. You rarely ever have track failure just because it's steel. The tracks don't move. You don't have a problem of a rail moving independent. The left rail moves independent of the right rail. That doesn't happen on steel roller coasters because, well, they're steel. So how do you do this with a steel roller coaster? Well, steel coasters are typically a failure inside or around the train. The train is where that will fail on a steel coaster when you're talking about a derailment. Is it common for a steel coaster to derail? No, it's not. Typically, they need some sort of other intervention that happens. Heavy mechanical failures. There was a mechanical failure where a train ran back through and all the brake fins got caught up underneath the thing, and basically the excess material wedged the wheel carrier away from the track, which caused it to bend and break the wheel carrier. The wheel carrier, that's this guy right here. This is the wheel carrier. So it pushed it away from the track, and then it broke the thing. And then that allowed that one particular axle to come up and off the track. Now, on steel roller coasters, wooden roller coasters, everything else, as long as they're not a leading axle, the very, very, very front or the very, very, very rear, they're not too bad. But if the very, very rear of a roller coaster comes off the track, then the whole coach can twist sideways and roll and twist on its side, and you can have a fatality. Like, that's no good. It's the same thing with the front. If the front comes undone, the guide, then it can twist, it can roll. So if it's in the middle, it's really not so bad. It'll be bumpy, it'll be rough, but it's not really bad for anybody involved. Rarely any injuries out of them. So when you look at wheel carriers to the track, they're much harder to get off of the track. So this is my mock wheel carrier. I don't mean mock as in mock rides. I mean, it's a mix-up of different manufacturer wheel carriers. This is a cross between basically the way I did this was like a B&M towards the front, and this is more like Intamin towards the rear. So on these wheel carriers, people say like, well, if you break a wheel off, then the wheel carrier will come off the track. It's like, no, it won't, because the wheel carriers aren't shaped that way. They're shaped to stay on the track. What do you mean? Well, on this particular one, here's my track right here in the center. Right? There's my track. I say, Ryan, your track looks like PVC pipe. Shut up. Hopefully this is working out. All right, so the wheel carrier on the back end, this is the side that would face the inside towards the track. Right here, this way. Well, this is where the track goes right here. Right where my arm is going. Well, if you notice, the wheel carrier is shaped like a C right here. This is what manufacturers do to build the safety in to prevent them from derailing. So on a wheel carrier like this, there's one on each side, of course. You could take off the road wheels, the guide wheels, and the upstop wheels. You could take all these right off of there and push the train over the top. You could send it through a loop. You could send it through a corkscrew. Will it get very far? Probably not. Will it stay on the track? Yes, it will stay on the track. Great. So typically what happens is if you see a wooden or a steel coaster derail, something has failed to get this C-shaped assembly off the rail for some reason. So I could think of Magic Mountain, one I remember recently. Magic Mountain was one of those things where basically a tree fell across the track, and they ran the train, and it basically hit the lead axle and twisted the lead axle so hard that the wheel carrier was able to come off one side and hang down. Did it come off the track completely? No, but it got it partially derailed. I mean, the roller coaster hit a tree. That's not normal. So it's not normal as in like, these are very unusual operating circumstances when these things happen. There's heavy mechanical failures somewhere. At the top of the wheel carrier, there's a pin that goes through this hole. If this case were a ride that sits on top of the rail, such as a stand-up roller coaster or a floorless roller coaster, or just like a hyper roller coaster, the wheel carrier pivots from this pin up here, and it's allowed to swing side to side or front to back like that. So if this pin were to come out, or the bearing assembly that sits on top of it were to break, then the wheel carrier essentially could basically twist to one side, this way or the other way. Knocking my keys off of there. It could twist and rotate to one side, which would allow it to come off the track. But that requires, there's a lot of components that have to fail, because these components up here aren't single point failure items. They're not things that if just one little thing failed, the whole thing comes off. There's safeties on both sides. There's catches up there to prevent that exact same thing from happening. On an invert, it's that whole assembly, but it's just mounted to the bottom down here. The same thing. It's just mounted to the bottom instead of the top. So it has the same thing. It's got multiple catches. It's got bearings with retainer plates on the bottom to prevent the whole eye bolt from coming out of there. The same exact stuff. That's why when you derail a wood roller coaster, you have a track failure. If you derail a steel roller coaster, you have component failure inside the train or some other massive external force of God that happened outside of the train that the train interacted with. I didn't think this video was going to be too long because honestly, outside of the Blackpool Pleasure Beach wooden roller coaster realm right there, when it gets to steel roller coasters derailing, it's always something heavy-duty mechanical that goes wrong. The one before that I can think of was Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland a bunch of years ago, where they left basically part of the wheel assembly, part of the axle on the lead coach of Big Thunder. It was taken apart, basically. It was physically taken apart, and the train was supposed to be removed from service, and somehow I believe operations grabbed that train and put it on, running around the track, basically partially dismantled. And it made it a handful of cycles before the components jammed up against each other, and the byproduct of that jamming up against each other and the whole train basically colliding with itself was one part of it derailed. It's like, yeah, derailment is typically a byproduct of a bigger problem on steel roller coasters. Because again, on a steel roller coaster, this being the backside, the wheel carrier's on the top, it's on the bottom. The track can't go anywhere. And if you look at it from the side right there, you see that the wheel carrier, move my microphone there, the wheel carrier is shaped like a C right around the track. It can't go anywhere unless you physically have something fail in the pin, in the bearing. It's really just not happening for a steel roller coaster. They're really designed not to come off the rails. All right, I think I've gone off the rails long enough on this one. If you got anything to add to the video, let me know. By all means, there's stories out there. Let's hear them. I'm sure there's lots of instances specific of like, hey, this happened, that. But if you really look at most every ride where they said it derailed, it's either a wheel carrier broke, like right here in the weld somewhere, completely just split in half. The wheel carrier broke and derailed, or the track, something happened with the track. It moved over and it derailed there as well. We had a incident on a wooden roller coaster at my home park that was the laminate stack had pushed over, and one of the guide upstop wheels was able to just come right out of the track, and the train in basically two coaches wound up on top of the track instead of inside of the track. That's a derailment. But when we looked at that, we looked back and we could find the exact piece of track where you could see the upstop wheel had come out of there. And then we started looking at that track really carefully, and we found, yeah, there was about 50, 60 feet of track right there where the whole laminate stack had loosened up. But it was not really screaming at us that it needed attention. But once we found it, it's like, yep, we had to go through and replace all the track in that area, because there's not really just a tighten it back down for that scenario. It's typically you have to replace it. Anyways, Like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff downstairs. It does help me out. I do appreciate it. If you got someone that Blackpool Pleasure Beach, they want to know more about it, send them this video if it'll help. I mean, hopefully it will help. We don't really know what happened out there until the park releases more information. I kind of doubt the park is going to release more information. It's probably just one of those things that's going to be fixed. And the ride, I'm guessing, completely guessing, speculation, Big Dipper will probably open up for the 2027 season with new track in that area. Just a wild guess. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Stay off the air gates.